There are people who wake up on their birthday and simply go about their day as if nothing has changed. They don't announce it, they don't expect celebration, and they certainly don't make a scene. To the outside world, it's just another Tuesday, another rotation around the sun that requires no fanfare. You know the feeling when everyone around you seems to treat their birthday like a personal holiday, and you're standing there wondering what all the fuss is about. Maybe you've learnt that expecting attention feels more dangerous than receiving none at all. Maybe somewhere along the way, you decided that being ordinary on your birthday was safer than risking disappointment. I remember the first birthday I let pass without telling anyone at work. I sat at my desk, answered emails, ate lunch alone and went home. No one knew, and honestly, that felt like a relief rather than a loss. When you grow up in a home where your needs were background noise, celebrating yourself can feel like shouting into a void. The child who learned that their excitement was too much, their joy too loud, their presence too demanding grows into an adult who treats their birthday like an inconvenience. You internalize the message that your existence wasn't worth pausing for. So you tell yourself it's just a day. You say you're not into birthdays, that they're commercialized nonsense, that making a big deal about aging is shallow. But underneath those rational explanations lives something quieter and more painful. Have you ever noticed how you downplay your birthday before anyone else gets the chance? You preemptively dismiss it, joke about getting older, or hide it entirely. This isn't humility, it's protection. The psychology here runs deeper than simple preference. When a child's emotional needs are consistently unmet, they learn to minimize those needs entirely. Your birthday becomes a test you're afraid to take because you've failed it before. I used to tell people I didn't care about birthdays, and I believed it. But the truth was, I cared so much that not caring felt like the only way to survive. Every year that passed without acknowledgement confirmed what I already suspected. I wasn't worth remembering. You watch other people celebrate themselves without shame, and it looks foreign to you. They post photos, gather friends, wear birthday crowns in restaurants, and something in you recoils, not from judgment, but from a painful recognition that you've never allowed yourself that kind of visibility. The person who treats their birthday like a normal day often carries a history of normalized neglect. Maybe your parents forgot, maybe they remembered but made it about themselves. Maybe celebrations in your home came with conditions, with strings attached, with the unspoken rule that your joy was only acceptable if it didn't inconvenience anyone else. So you learned to be small. You learned that wanting attention was selfish, that expecting people to show up was asking too much, that your special day was actually just an ordinary day that happened to fall on your birth date. There's a particular loneliness in scrolling through social media on your birthday and seeing everyone else's celebrations while you sit quietly with the knowledge that no one knows. You could tell them, but the act of telling feels like begging, and you'd rather be invisible than desperate. I've spent birthdays working double shifts, deep cleaning my apartment, binge watching shows I'd already seen. Anything to make the day pass faster, to prove to myself that it didn't matter, but the effort required to pretend it didn't matter proved that it did. When someone does remember your birthday unexpectedly, you feel a complex mix of emotions. There's gratitude, yes, but also discomfort, suspicion, and a strange guilt for being noticed. You don't know how to receive attention you didn't ask for because you've spent so long believing you didn't deserve it. The internal narrative becomes, I'm low maintenance, I don't need much, I'm easy. But low maintenance is often code for, I've learned not to ask. Easy is often another word for, I've made my needs so small, they're nearly invisible. You tell yourself that people who make a big deal about their birthdays are attention-seeking or immature, but really you're defending against your own pain by criticizing what you've denied yourself. It's easier to judge celebration than to grieve its absence in your own life. In psychological terms, this is learned self-suppression. Your emotional needs weren't just unmet, they were treated as burdensome. So you learn to bury them, to perform independence, to become the person who doesn't need anything from anyone. I remember turning 30 and spending the entire day alone by choice. I told myself it was empowering, that I was comfortable in my own company, but at night, lying in bed, I felt the weight of that choice and wondered if it was really a choice at all. The hardest part isn't the birthday itself, it's the accumulation of birthdays where you've had to be your own witness, your own celebration, your own acknowledgement. Year after year of proving to yourself that you can survive being unseen. You might even find yourself feeling relieved when your birthday passes without notice, At least there's no disappointment, no unmet expectations, no painful gap between what you hoped for and what you received. Silence becomes safer than hope. But here's what that relief is actually protecting you from: the vulnerability of wanting, the risk of caring, the terrifying possibility that if you admitted your birthday mattered and no one showed up, you'd have to face a truth you've been avoiding. When you were young and your birthday was forgotten or minimized, you absorbed a message. You are forgettable. You are minimal. Your presence in the world is not an event worth marking. That message doesn't disappear just because you grow up. It lives in your body, in your automatic responses, in the way you instinctively shrink yourself every time your birthday approaches. You've become an expert at preemptive disappointment. I started noticing how I'd change the subject whenever someone asked about birthday plans, how I'd make jokes to deflect, how I'd literally forget to tell people until the day had passed. These weren't accidents, they were strategies. You've built an entire identity around not needing celebration, and that identity feels safe, it feels mature, it feels like you've transcended something shallow that other people still cling to. But what if you've just transcended your own needs? There's a difference between genuinely not enjoying birthdays and having learned to protect yourself from the pain of uncelebrated existence. One is preference, the other is adaptation to emotional neglect. The person who genuinely doesn't care about birthdays can still receive celebration with grace. But you deflect it, minimize it, feel uncomfortable with it, rush through it. That's not disinterest, that's defense. Think about how you respond when someone tries to celebrate you. Do you feel grateful, or do you feel exposed? Do you feel joy, or do you feel like you need to earn it? Do you relax into it, or do you immediately try to shift attention elsewhere? Your discomfort with celebration is your body's way of saying, "This doesn't feel safe. I've been hurt here before. I learned that visibility leads to disappointment, so I'd rather stay hidden." I realized I was performing indifference. Every "it's just another day" was actually a plea for someone to disagree with me, to insist that I mattered, to fight through my deflection and celebrate me anyway. But I made it impossible for them to do that. When you consistently minimize your own birthday, you train others to do the same. They learn to match your energy. They take your words at face value. They stop trying because you've convinced them you don't want them to try. And then you feel hurt that no one tried, even though you explicitly told them not to. This is the paradox of the person who treats their birthday like a normal day. You want to be seen, but you've made yourself invisible. The psychology of this is rooted in attachment theory. If your early caregivers were inconsistent or dismissive of your emotional needs, you developed what's called an avoidant attachment style. You learned that expressing needs leads to rejection, so you stopped expressing them. Your birthday becomes an annual test of this pattern. Will anyone see through your performance? Will anyone care enough to push past your deflection? Will anyone prove that you're worth celebrating even when you insist you're not? Most years, no one does. Not because they don't care, but because you've built a wall so convincing that they respect it. They think they're honoring your wishes when really they're reinforcing your deepest fear. I spent years angry at people for not celebrating me while simultaneously hiding my birthday from them. The cognitive dissonance was exhausting. I wanted to be seen, but I was terrified of being visible. Here's the truth you might not want to hear. Your birthday matters, not because of societal expectations or because you should perform gratitude for aging, but because your existence is worth marking. You were born, and that is significant. The day you entered the world changed it. Your presence has rippled outward in ways you can't fully measure, and once a year there's an opportunity to acknowledge that, to witness your own life, to let others witness it too. But you've learned to treat your birth like an inconvenience, your life like something that shouldn't take up space, your joy like something that needs to be justified. And every birthday you let pass unremarked becomes more evidence for this false narrative. When you watch other people celebrate their birthdays, what you're really watching is people who believe they deserve to be celebrated. They haven't learned to apologize for existing. They haven't internalized the message that their joy is too much. You might think they're self-absorbed or needy, but really, they've just maintained a connection to something you lost early on. The belief that their life matters enough to pause for, to acknowledge, to celebrate. I used to see birthday celebrations as performative. Now I see them as practice. Practice in letting yourself be loved, in allowing others to show up for you, in believing you're worth the effort. The person who treats their birthday like a normal day is often the same person who apologizes for taking up space, who feels guilty for having needs, who believes their worth is contingent on how little they ask for. Your birthday isn't just about cake and presents. It's about your willingness to let yourself matter. It's about your capacity to receive love. It's about whether you believe your existence is gift enough. And when you spend your birthday alone, telling yourself it's fine, what you're really doing is practicing emotional isolation. You're reinforcing the neural pathways that say, I can handle everything alone, I don't need anyone, I'm fine being forgotten. But your nervous system knows the difference between chosen solitude and resigned isolation. Your body keeps score, and every birthday that passes without connection adds to a deficit you may not even realize you're carrying. There's a particular grief in looking back at years of birthdays you didn't celebrate, not because the days themselves were important, but because of what they represent. A pattern of self-abandonment, a history of deciding you weren't worth showing up for. I think about all the birthdays I spent proving I didn't need anyone, and I feel sad for that version of me. He was so convinced that independence was strength that he never considered that letting people in might be braver. The question isn't really about birthdays, it's about whether you believe you deserve to be celebrated at all, whether your life is significant enough to mark, whether your existence has brought something to the world worth acknowledging. And if the answer is, I don't know, or probably not, then your birthday isn't the problem, it's a symptom. It's pointing to a deeper wound, one that says you're only valuable if you're useful, only lovable if you're low maintenance, only acceptable if you're small. When you treat your birthday like a normal day, you're not being humble, you're being self-protective. You're avoiding the vulnerability of wanting something you might not receive. You're controlling the narrative before it can hurt you. But control born from fear isn't really control, it's just another form of captivity. You're not free from needing celebration. You're imprisoned by the belief that needing it makes you weak. I've started doing something small but significant. I tell people it's my birthday, not with fanfare or expectation, just as a fact. Hey, it's my birthday today. And sometimes nothing happens, but sometimes something does. The practice isn't about getting something from others, it's about dismantling the story that my birthday doesn't matter. It's about challenging the belief that I need to hide my existence to be acceptable. You deserve to be celebrated not because you've earned it, but because you exist. Your birthday isn't a test you need to pass or a burden you need to minimize. It's just a day that says, you're here, and that's enough. The people who love you want to celebrate you. But if you've spent years convincing them you don't want that, they've learned to stay back. They're not neglecting you, they're respecting what they think are your boundaries. So maybe this year, you try something different. You let someone know, you allow a small acknowledgement, you don't perform indifference or rush through discomfort, you sit with the vulnerability of being seen. It will feel strange, it will feel exposing. You'll want to deflect or minimize or make jokes, but beneath that urge is the part of you that's been waiting your whole life to be celebrated without having to ask. Your inner child, the one whose birthday was forgotten or overshadowed or treated as an inconvenience, is still inside you. And every year you let your birthday pass without acknowledgement, you're confirming what they learned back then. But you can choose differently. You can decide that your birth was significant. You can allow yourself to be witnessed. You can practice receiving love even when it feels uncomfortable. This isn't about becoming someone who throws elaborate parties or posts birthday countdowns on social media. It's about stopping the internal violence of treating your own existence as something to apologize for. I'm not saying birthdays need to be grand or public or even particularly special. I'm saying they don't need to be hidden, they don't need to be survived, they don't need to be proof of how little you need. You are allowed to want acknowledgement, you are allowed to feel disappointed when you don't receive it, you are allowed to matter enough to mark the day you were born. The resistance you feel to this idea, the voice that says that's selfish or I don't need that or other people have it worse, that's not wisdom. That's the part of you that learned to be small to stay safe. When you heal this wound, birthdays might still be quiet. You might still prefer low-key celebrations, but the energy will be different. It won't be about avoiding disappointment, it'll be about honoring your own pace. There's a profound difference between choosing solitude and resigning yourself to it, between preferring simplicity and believing you don't deserve complexity, between being low maintenance and being self-erasing. Your birthday is practice for a bigger question. Do you believe your life matters? Not in some abstract everyone matters way, but specifically, personally, in the day-to-day reality of your existence. If you struggle to celebrate your birthday, you probably struggle to celebrate yourself in general, to acknowledge your wins, to receive compliments, to take up space without apologizing. And that's not a personality trait, that's not who you are, that's what you learned, and what you learned can be unlearned. I'm learning to let my birthday be a day, not a test, not a performance, not a source of shame, just a day that marks my existence, that allows others to acknowledge me, that reminds me I'm here. Some years will feel more significant than others. Some birthdays will be joyful, some will be quiet, some will be sad, but none of them need to be hidden. You don't owe anyone a celebration, but you also don't owe anyone your invisibility. Your birthday is allowed to matter to you, even if it's just a little, even if you're scared to admit it. The person who treats their birthday like a normal day is protecting themselves from a very old pain. But protection can become prison. Safety can become isolation. And at some point you have to ask, what am I still protecting myself from? Maybe this year you let someone celebrate you. Maybe you light a candle for yourself. Maybe you do one small thing that acknowledges that your birth, your life, your presence here matters. Because it does. Even if no one told you, even if you learnt to believe otherwise, even if it feels uncomfortable to accept, you matter. Your birthday matters. And you are worth celebrating, not because you've earned it, but because you're here.